Rosewood Academy, July 2026. This month we have Mike Connolly back with us. He was with us in the beginning of the year. We are starting our Q3 session. And Mike, if you want to go to the next slide, we always start with our why. And our why is to multiply our blessings and opportunities that have been placed into our trust. And then we go start on what is Q3 all about, which Jay will introduce.
So as you see here, we always like to go through all of our sessions for the year. We just finished our Q2 of communicating with clarity and confidence, and we are starting Q3. As you can see, the theme is driving process and performance excellence. For anybody who missed any of our sessions for Q1 or in Q2, you can find all of our past sessions of the year on YouTube. So feel free to watch them there, reach out to marketing, and we can get you whatever episode you need. And as I said a minute ago, we are starting our Q3 today with Michael Connolly. And here's a little bit about Mike. If you want to introduce yourself, Mr. Connolly, feel free to.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate you given the time to come and listen. So I am an adjunct professor over at Campbell University. However, I've spent the bulk of my career, 40 years of my career, in the business world. So I've worked a lot of different business environments and spent a lot of time throughout organizations in various capacities, improving and helping grow a better business, if you will. So that'll be reflected in some of the stuff we talk about as we go through this. Antonio, did you want me to take it from here?
You're good to go, sir.
Oh, okay, great. So first and foremost, so I do have a few slides to show, obviously. I'm going to try to accomplish it in about 45 minutes maximum. This way we have plenty of time for Q&A if needed at the end. If you do need to ask me a question during one of the slides, feel free to raise the hand. I might not see it, so Antonio or anybody else on the call, if you want to interrupt me at some point and say somebody has a question, you're welcome to, but I might not be looking down and see the hand raised, so I'll just guide you that way in the beginning, but we'll definitely have Q&A at the end. Table of contents, I'm not going to cover it. Let's get to the bulk of the slides. We'll hit all of these as we're going through on each slide, but we do have all these to cover. Your core values. Let me begin just with three primary definitions. And I'm doing this because I use these words often, and you're going to hear them just about every other slide, unfortunately, and I'll do my best not to say it too much. But, you know, I very much talk a lot about the efficiency of a business, its effectiveness, and the productivity of an organization. So from an efficient perspective, when I'm talking about that, it's about minimizing the waste of time, energy, or resources that we're utilizing and materials. Where effective, it produces a desired result that we're attempting to accomplish or we want to accomplish, and its intended purpose, as it says here. And the productivity is really effectively generating the high output and the yields and the gains that we want to have within the business. So again, when I'm utilizing these words, you'll get a little better understanding for what I'm aiming for during those slides. So let me start off, before we start talking about the process improvements, let me talk about the whys and the impacts of an inefficient environment. You know, all businesses have this, right? You have people who are working every day and going through their daily rigor and trying to accomplish the tasks that are put upon them. And what ends up happening if you're in an environment that's not as efficient as it can be, you get employees who start experiencing burnout. Their morale is impacted by the business. More so it could bleed out to customers. So customers and your partnerships, your supply chain, they can all be impacted because suddenly they're receiving poor service or lower quality than they expected. And it also, impacts how we do things as a business in terms of, profitability levels, our growth path as an organization, and what we, definitely don't want at the end of all that is an impact to our brand reputation. Now, beyond just the employee level and that, this ripples up through the whole organization. So while you might think something that's inefficient for you in your role, your function, might be only impacting you, and maybe you sit back and think, all right, I'll deal with it. It's just the way we do things. Well, just understand it ripples throughout the entire organization, all the way up the food chain, back to the executive level. Again, as I said on the last slide, expands out to customers and partnerships that you have. And overall, what we don't want within a business is the morale of the employees to be impacted when it's something that we can improve upon and we can fix by just talking it over and going through the process building efforts. Because really, we don't want decreased job satisfaction. We know that can lead to turnover. Turnover leads to other challenges, especially when you have somebody leave and now you have to go out there and try to rehire individuals. The process that the recruitment takes, the training, the experience building within that business, that's a long effort to go through, when what we can do is just review the internal processes we're using and the structures that we have in place and just improve the business. And of course, it costs money. Beyond just the typical growth, it could stunt innovation in the business. How we expand the organization. If we wanted to start moving into new markets, it could slow that down because we no longer have the ability and the profit models to do so. So now we're delaying all those. So there's a lot of challenges it can present for a business. So identifying what's working and what's not. Recognizing the bottlenecks in the business. Where are workflow delays happening? And I'm sorry if you're hearing noise in my background. I've had a power outage this morning. It sounds like everything's coming back up in my office, so that'll just be a noise for a moment. I apologize. But the workflows, areas for improvement. Look, we as employees can impact all of these. Now, every employee can't play a role in how the company invests. It's not our responsibility at every role in the organization. It's also not every role in the organization who can drive new revenue potentially, but everybody in the business can help create efficiencies and make us more effective and productive within our given functions and roles. So it's important to recognize we all have the ability to be engaged and be proactive about it, listening, raising hand, as I put here. So there is a great deal of improvement every one of us can help. So to start off with, map your business systems, the preparation. So in normal business structure, when talking about these things, they identify 4 primary areas or core functions that lead to kind of the structure of the business, which is marketing, which is the whole lead effort, sales, which is the conversion of those leads into revenue, operations, process, and delivery of those services, and the finance, which is to cash flow. I would say that while that I understand to be true, all areas of our business, all departments, all functions, all have a function in making the business more capable to improve and be more seamless to what we're trying to accomplish. So while there are 4 core areas, never overlook all of them. But as you're building your plan or your map, as we're describing it here, define your purpose. You really only need 3. I guide every business to just stick with 3 primary areas of focus for a given period, whether it's a fiscal year, fiscal quarter, or a project you're working on. Stick with 3, 5 maximum. Hard to manage when you put too many in there. But define the purpose up front so you know why you're doing this. What's the outcome you're looking to achieve? Start tracking everything you're working on. Now, I know that Rosewood has all of these processes and policies in place today. I don't know how often they're reviewed. You guys would know that better than I do, but this is something you need to pull up all that old workflow and work through them. Maybe you have new people in new roles and functions that you want to make sure, are we following the way we've defined this up front, or has the work just changed? The way we're providing that workflow and the operational structure to gain that output has it changed a little bit? And maybe we didn't go back and change it within our initial mapping and our processes, and we need to update all that. So all of that is important when we go through this material to understand. Every step-by-step plays a good role, mapping it all out, your keys, your tools, your people, and the visual tools. So visual tools mean more like, how are you implementing it visually for people to see, whether it's something like a Six Sigma, so you're doing your define, your measure, your analysis, your improve, your control, or for me, I start everything on a whiteboard or through spreadsheets. I feel like I have my whole world, business and personal, on spreadsheets that I begin my thinking with. But then you can work out to hierarchical tools, swim lanes. It's whatever tools visually represent what you're trying to accomplish, but kind of fit for purpose, I would say. I don't use all the same tools other than my spreadsheets for everything. I might vary depending on what that is. And then, of course, when you've done all that, you're going to want to involve who all the stakeholders are, as it says here. So roles and functions. I don't look at it as a people thing on this. I know people by name are in certain roles, but you should be building it based on what the function and the role should be accomplishing. A given individual in that role, you might then look at to say, okay, how does that individual impact that? Because we've had other people in that same function and role, and they're either not as productive or they're less productive. So now how does that given individual change the way these outcomes are built? So you can look at all of that as well. So to start, a good way to start is, for me, identifying what's working. So what are our strengths? So first and foremost, let's identify those. What are working in the best way they could be? And we have little frustration throughout the business, little issues. We're not getting backlogs from these processes. So why are they working? Start looking at those first. Not to fix them, just to identify why are these working so well, and let's identify those processes that seem to be flowing the best way possible. Are we using certain type of tools? Who's involved with it from a team member perspective? What methodologies are we utilizing? Are there any automation that's being involved with this that lead to a greater outcome? So identifying those things will be good up front, so we know as we start talking about other areas that we have things that work successfully. Now you can move these to the side because they're working well. There's nothing to fix here yet. And I say yet because there's always things you can go back and improve upon. But let's just, because they are working so well and we have processes in place that function well, let's move those to the side after we list the positives from each, and then start working on where are those things that aren't working? What are our bottlenecks in the business? What seems to be causing us or creating the greatest level of complaint or frustration throughout the business? And there's a lot of areas you can start in there. Somebody always has something to say in terms of this isn't working well, or I have a problem here, or customers are consistently complaining about this. So why aren't we doing more here? So those are the easy things to start thinking about right away, because people tend to be vocal about it. Now, you also want to find out what's slowing us down, right? So what's creating us to do double the work? What is causing us the most time? It seems to delay us when we're doing projects each time when we reach this given area. So start looking at each and understanding why do those occur. We're not going to fix them all yet. Let's go through the process, but put them down on a piece of paper, write them into a structured format. Like I said, I tend to use spreadsheets right away and whiteboards to start the thinking process. So I'm going to start jotting all of that down so I don't forget them. But make a list up front. Note everywhere that they have issues. Speak to your employees, speak to your customers as best you can, and create a living document, if you will, but one that you don't forget you have. Oftentimes we have these living documents that get put to the side, and next thing you know, nobody's managing them anymore. Someone has to own it. Someone has to manage it and be responsible for it, and make sure it's not just a document that goes on pause for a period of time but continues to exist until we work it through the plan to the point of we've improved upon it and benefited everybody within the business along with the business. Another area that I want us or everybody as a business to not overlook is the stuff that's a little harder to see. Things that, yeah, they're working good. They're working well. They're not working great, but they're working well. And oftentimes what happens with something like that is we lose sight that it could still be improved upon. So that's where the good, better, best comes in. And some of this is harder to see because, one, human oversight can play a big role here. In other words, someone in the business likes doing it a certain way. It works for them, and they believe it's the best for how they want to run the business. But they may also be concerned about changes being disruption to the business. I like it this way. If we change it, it'll take too long to change. Let me just do it this way. We got to get to the next customer. Look, it happens all the time, but we have to be willing to identify all of it. Routines are great, but routines can also be what's hurting, how we improve the business. And I do use an example here. Throughout my career, I began my career solely in sales, but then I morphed into other areas, especially as I sat in executive roles, and I took on more operational roles, mostly around how revenue is improved upon and created throughout an organization. But I use an example here, and I'm picking on sales a little bit because it seems like every sales environment I've ever been in, even as I do consulting work, they all seem to have someone in the business, if not many, who have singular views on when revenue is not growing the way they want it to grow, the best way to improve upon it is let's put another headcount in place. And I will tell you from what I've done throughout my career and how I do things now, it's not. A headcount doesn't solve your problem. The headcount doesn't solve likely why you're less efficient at what you're doing and you're not getting the effective and productivity that you're looking for within the business. And I'll give a very brief example. When I first came to North Carolina in 2004, I was asked to fix a region in a technology business out of Raleigh here it was doing fine on paper. It was doing 17 million a year, but they were underperforming, meaning they weren't meeting the high growth goals that they wanted, and they were a little dysfunctional throughout the business of how they were interacting. Now, upon joining, they immediately told me that the executives told me, we're giving you 2 new sales headcount to ads because we need new revenue right away. So great. I had 5 sales people currently at 17 million, 2 new headcount, but I didn't add 2 new headcount. I took 3 months to actually evaluate the business, doing everything we're going to talk about here. And seeing everything that was going on from not just a client interaction perspective, but throughout the organization. How are we delivering it? How are we operationalizing it? Now, I'll fast forward 3 years later, that $17 million business was doing $54 million, and we still had 5 sales headcount. I didn't use the sales headcount. I used it for other purposes in the business that I felt were more relevant and more needing to help improve what we were doing. I certainly added sales headcount after that, but for the first 3 years, I stuck with it, and it still made a big difference just operationalizing it better rather than just throwing headcount at something. So fix it before you throw headcount at it is what I would say. So when you're evaluating, do a lot of work to figure out root cause. Just don't look at things at the surface level. It's great that we want to pick on the things we most obviously see, and that's natural. It's normal for us to just see something that we think is not working, and we'll tackle that one, address it right away, and we're done. I fixed it. But that's really probably not getting you to the root cause of what's really going on. So I would say take the time necessary. Now, I'm not a guy about speed in business. I'm about doing things right, not doing it fast. I'd love to have both, but I'll give up speed for accuracy. That's just my personality. So determine if your poor results are driven by broken workflows or tools or policies. You have to evaluate all of it. Figure out within the business where the nature of it stems from. Now, you can use things such as the iceberg method. I'm not going to go deeply into that, just like I can't go deeply into Six Sigma. That it feels to me like that's a different hour session on those things to do it right. But look into those. Do a lot of asking why. I ask why a lot in a business. I get to the point where I frustrate people because when they're telling me what they're doing, I'm asking them why. When they explain it again, I ask why again and why until I really get down deeper into the nature of why we're doing something the way we're doing it. And I just feel like that just works out very effectively. Let me give you an example. This isn't the iceberg method, but it's a people need to see within the business. All too often, let's take a sales environment for example. All too often, people see this within a sales organization, which is the stuff above the waterline with an iceberg. What people think sales is based on is the winning of sales, celebrations, everybody's happy, commissions being made. So the view is it's all working great because look, we've got new business coming in and people seem to be celebrating, we're good. But what people aren't noticing is what really goes on below the surface, below that iceberg level that's visible to you above the water. All of this is what's going on to make an effective sales business. And all of it, every bullet here needs to be thought about, needs to have new processes and needs to be driven point by point by point to figure out, are we doing it the most effective way we can? And is it effectively improving the business and generating the outputs we want so we can see what happens above the waterline? Success won't happen if we're not doing all that work as seamlessly as we can. So I'm showing this as an example because I use it with other companies that I've worked with, just to demonstrate there's more to this than just what you're visibly seeing, and you can't overlook any of it. It's the most important part. The outcome is terrific, but if you're not doing all of this other stuff right and optimally, you're not going to see those outcomes you're hoping for. So diagnosing your inputs and outputs, critically important. Take the time to do it right. Involve all the departments that should be involved, the functions, the roles, and the people that are involved with these every day, and understand what are those inputs, what are those pieces that we're trying to do. Do we have the right elements in place? Are we following the process that we've already defined for ourselves, or are we not? If we're not, well, why aren't we? Is there a better process? Is that why you've changed the way you're doing it? If there is, why haven't we changed the operational manuals that we already have on how to do this in the most effective way? So you got to spend a lot of time and willingness to pick these things apart and go through it and document and flow it out. Now, by the time you get to the point of having it as an output or an outflow, you have to remove all what we've already discussed. So are there bottlenecks? Are there things that are delaying us? Are there areas of that business that drop off or just don't work as effectively? And why not? Let's take a look at those and better understand, because we have to get our business running optimally. We can't ignore it. So let's improve upon it, to make a better environment for everybody. So there's plenty of diagnostic tools out there. I'm sure you already have several within your business already. So I'm probably not telling you something you haven't potentially used to date. There is something called the 35-minute method, which take something that's a painful area of the business, look at it, and give yourself 35 minutes. Put it on a timer, 35 minutes to push through it, get the right people people involved, and let's get some quick answers and see how to fix this in a more timely method. I will tell you, I don't personally use this, and I don't personally use it because of what I said a few slides ago. I over-evaluate things. I want to look at things piece by piece by piece, and I don't put a clock on it because I want to know how it's functioning, and I want to see it repeated over and over again to see if it's a one-time instance or it's multiple. So typically, I'm not the person who falls under the 35-minute method. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just my personality. And I more deeply look at everything over time to see how it's working, because again, I have this feeling for me, it's about doing it with quality and doing it right rather than doing it fast. You can use approaches to rate things. I do rate things as I'm working through stuff. I've told you I work through spreadsheets, as it says here, for scorecarding. I do create a lot of spreadsheets for things, so I do use rating structures. I'll use weighted systems where I need to. Utilizing key performance indicators. Most companies these days have KPIs that they're generating for a fiscal year or for a quarterly approach to the business, that they want to achieve certain things each quarter, and those fall under KPIs. I will say, as I said earlier, keep the list short. I say 3 to 5 here. I'm really more of the mentality 3 KPIs is best because you can manage and people can remember what those are. The moment you're spreading them out to being no more than 5, people start forgetting what the KPIs are, and they're only remembering the main ones that they wanted to talk about or we talk about more regularly. So try to maintain that list as best you can to a short order. Process mining. So there's various tools out there. I don't know which ones you use today, but tools like Celonis, UiPath, Nintex, you can certainly use those in the business to have an automated approach to identifying bottlenecks in the system. I typically feel like, again, I can interact with people and figure out bottlenecks. That's been more my style, but the tools can make it much more efficient for you than maybe I'm doing. I just like to have my fingers in it and be a closer touch to talking to individuals within the business and seeing how it's going. Feedback and interview. When I said earlier, even my example that I came to Raleigh and it took me 3 months to evaluate what was going on within the region before I made any changes or made any process improvements. I did a lot of feedback and I did a lot of interviews. I talked to a lot of the employees, not just within the office here, but other offices, other departments, and structures through the organization, because I wanted to find out not just how it works here, but how is it supposed to work from kind of, I'll call it an HQ perspective. We never called it headquarters, but how was it supposed to work? How do other groups interact with this particular office? So we did all that. I worked with a lot of customers, found out many things that shared with me from internal to the business that customers were sharing, and much of the feedback had a lot of redundancies. So once you get that many redundancies, you take notice to it. So my point with this is, gather as much information as you want. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to have customers yell at you. I can't tell you how many times I've been yelled at from customers, but I'm not taking it as I'm being yelled at. I'm taking it as I'm gathering information. So I don't take it personal. A raised voice doesn't always feel good, but I listen very closely and I'm trying to understand what somebody is looking for and saying. And oftentimes when somebody's saying something in frustration, they're kind of giving you the clues that you need if you listen to the words they're using, and you have a better way of figuring things out. So just listen closely is what I would say. So fixing and optimizing, after you gather your information, you build your maps, you build your plans out, you build the structures you need, and start looking at all the processes that you've documented, the tools that are in place. Now, what are you going to do with them? Now it starts to be, how do we start to address and fix these? The first thing I put here is fix one by one. I don't believe in fixing all at once. It can get unwieldy. You start losing track of, which one's more important than the next one. And look, I'm not saying you can't fix two at a time, but I tend to be, let's fix the one that's causing the most heartache within the business first. If we can take that out of the way, then we can get to the next one. So fix what you need to be doing. Keep a focus on it so you don't lose track. Follow it all the way through. Don't, somewhere in here, I think I noted, maybe I haven't talked about it, but when you're doing it, don't assume as you're going through a process and you're learning about something that's not working. The first time you hear something that's not working in a singular process, don't automatically think, well, that must be it. Let me go fix it now and run off and try to fix it, because you haven't finished going step by step from beginning to end. And by doing so, what you're doing is potentially, yeah, you saw a problem, you saw a breakdown in the system or a potential bottleneck, but by just jumping in and trying to fix it right away, you're thinking you've already taken care of the problem. Now you're back to doing other work or other areas of the business. And by not following the rest of the process through, you didn't realize you missed 3 or 4 other areas, and probably the most problematic area of all. So follow it through beginning to end when you document, and then when you're fixing it, fix it piece by piece. And make sure you're not overlooking things. And again, I think your business is in a great place because you do have operational policies in place that you can have as reference points, and in many ways just see, are they being abided by? Are they needing to be modified and tweaked? So you're not building it from scratch. I've had to build a lot of these literally from scratch because they didn't exist, and they can take a long time. Here, I don't think you have that as a challenge. You have the ability to build upon it or modify, because as time changes, 6 months, 12 months later, 24 months later, all processes need to be reevaluated because something could change, and there could be new improvements coming along. New automation came out. AI is going to have an impact to many businesses, so you're going to need to develop that into your organizational structures where necessary. So it's always kind of a rinse and repeat. You got to keep going through it, even though you have a policy in place. There could be improvements. So as you're fixing and optimizing, do that one at a time. Remove the steps you don't need. Add automation where it makes most sense. I think automation is incredibly impactful to a business. It helped me greatly over my years. Now, I spent a lot of time on the technology, automation, and robotics side throughout my time in business. So there's a lot of tools, especially software, that could make life easier and could improve upon how you're doing things. Not take away from people's work efforts, but improve upon so you can get more accomplished more seamlessly. So take advantage of those because they're there. Create your standards, reduce the friction in the business. The more you reduce the friction, the better, right? We all have things that frustrate us. I dare anybody to say they don't get frustrated in their role once in a while. But the more we can relieve that and reduce it, the better the environment becomes for everybody. I already discussed some of these inefficiencies at the beginning, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I'll leave it here so you have it as a takeaway, as a reminder as you get through the deck. But let me go to the next. So at the field level, I'm a big believer, especially, again, I said I worked in a lot of technology environments. I am a big believer in staying very close to what's happening at the field level. Our technical expertise, our individuals who are always with clients and working so closely in the field with customers, have such great knowledge and information of what's going on. That feedback loop is hugely important. They have a greater understanding for what's working and what's not working. Maybe they don't express it all the time, but they can hear it all the time as well from customers. They're operationally very sound individuals and understand how business flow and data collection works, and the whole level of efficiency from even getting from point to point. How do you get from one customer to the next customer in the most seamless and operationally correct way? So that input from the field for me is critical. So the benefits, and let me just do a check on time. Okay, I'm right near time. Look, the overall business benefits are obvious to me. If you do all these things, which it's a daily rigor that you have to apply, but if you do all these things, you're getting a more developed staff, engaged staff. Your business becomes more agile, as I highlight here. These are all areas that throughout my career I focused on, and believe me, it has had more impact to the success of the organizations I've worked under, ensuring that the efficiencies, the effectiveness and productivity to a business are there, because it creates a greater culture within the organization. And the more sound culture has led to a more effective organization overall. I mean, it's great. We make sales. Again, I told you I've worked with a lot of sales departments, but it's all those other pieces that make for more effective revenue creation when it comes to that process. So your improvements in revenue and profit, your efficiencies, your lower costs, all lead to improvements, because all of those improvements lead to greater innovation, more research we can do, more expansion of the business, which is good for everybody as we're trying to grow a business. I gave an example. Now, look, some could pick me apart for picking two of the biggest organizations that are out there, but I did it for a reason. Look, they became big, especially use McDonald's. Now, Amazon, built quickly. It felt like, right? They didn't. They started off small and they built up, through the years. But both of these organizations still never stopped. They've become huge, mega billion-dollar companies that still to this day don't stop trying to figure out how can we do it more seamlessly than we were doing it yesterday. How do we improve upon it? How do we make it a better organization and experience for our employees and our customers? So I did use these as examples, even though they're quite large, because I give them credit for never taking their foot off that pedal and better always understanding why improvements of efficiencies and processes within the organization are their lifeblood. And they've shown that through their years, and that's why they're still here. That's why they're still big. And when you go, and work with them, it's even more streamlined. I mean, how amazing is it today that you order something on Amazon at 10 a.m. and it could be sitting on your front porch by 1 p.m. There's a lot that has to happen for that to occur, and yet now it does occur. So I think it's pretty impressive. 4 reminders. I use this on every slide. It really hasn't changed from any presentation I've done for you, but simplicity is something I always shoot for. Keep it simple. Don't make it too complex. If it's too complex, it's too hard to follow, and it will fall apart. Increase your efficiencies and productivities. Have that mindset all the time. And I'm a patient person when it comes to getting things right. So I would say be patient rather than, give me an answer now and let's go implement it. That's all good and great where possible, but all too often we need to be patient and get it right so that it's sustainable. There's a book out there by Jim Collins called Good to Great. One of the biggest takeaways I had from that, it's not just making a company go from good to great while that person's there. It's how do you make it sustainable, so even when the person who made those changes might leave 2 years, 3 years later, it's been sustainable and it didn't drop off the moment they left. So that patience and doing it right should have a sustainable outcome, and always communicate. I'm a big one for a lot of communication throughout the organization. So your communication approach, again, you know at Rosewood how best that works, but I'm just showing you can do it by phone, by email, company collaborations, team meetings, face-to-face, videos. You have all of that available to you today. It's great, all the tools we have. And when to communicate, have those discussions with your management. What do they do? They want to hear from you 10 times a day, or is it more of a daily feedback loop, a weekly or a monthly feedback loop on your calls, on your team calls? That's all got to be figured out how Rosewood would like to manage that so it's not unsustainable. But have those feedback loops in place. And what role do you have? I mean, the same role I mentioned in the very beginning. Look, we all have the ability to play and a very important role in how we identify something that's not working to its most optimal way in the business. Even if we don't have Six Sigma certification, if we're not the individuals that are maybe tasked with figuring all that out, you still as an employee can tell when something's not working the way it should be working in the most optimal way. Have a voice, provide that feedback, share with your boss, share in group discussions, and be proactive about it. I wouldn't, anytime you put something to the side, it tends to go away, right? So write it down. I put a lot of my notes in emails so I don't forget them. And then I can send them off to whom I need to send it off to. But your knowledge and your experiences are really important for all of this. Don't take away from knowing how important you really are in every role in the company. So sharing any level of feedback like that can improve the business is very valuable to all involved. It's not just for your role in that function, but it could impact everybody in the company depending on the type of improvement it is. For this, this is the last slide, I believe, but improving your personal knowledge in this area. There's a lot of information out there, I'm sure, on the internet. The internet has so many great things out there, but there's hands-on experience which you get every day. It's just taking that experience and instead of just checking the box and doing your tasks to get them done, start paying attention to what you're doing and how it could be done better, and growing from that. You'll learn a lot by going through that process. Get mentors and coaches within the business. There's certainly plenty of books and articles and training programs and online courses and stuff that you can be taking, but you got to figure out what works within your time frame of your day. But there's options out there. Utilize them. I've done a lot of that throughout my career. I can't even tell you how many books and so forth and trainings that I've gone through to gain some greater skills and improvements to how I'm doing my own personal business needs. I think that's it, Antonio. So yeah, there it is, 45 minutes.
Yes, sir. And this is where we open up if there's any questions or any for anybody. You can just simply unmute and ask away.
I had a question. Bobby, sorry. I had a question. How do you get other people to be excited for systems thinking?
So how do you get them excited? Well, for me, I mentioned that on one of the last slides, communicate. I tend to put together what it is we're trying to accomplish. And I talk to people very deeply about it. I lay things out. I try to educate them on what we're trying to do and involve them from their role and the impact for their role. So the more I can describe what we're doing and demonstrate to them how they're going to be involved and what their role would be, and the purpose of it, why are we doing it, but how is it going to make your job, your function, your role better? So I just tend to over-explain a lot of things, and that tends to help people get a better framework or mindset for why they might want to be involved. But I don't do it blindly, meaning I do have a thought process up front, like those 3 primary goals, I'll start describing to them to start off so they know what the purpose is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, and I appreciate it.
Sure. And it's not easy, by the way. Look, people don't like change.
Mhm.
It's just you got to live with that. And I'm a change agent within a business. So I've had to work through a lot of situations where not everybody's on board. Sometimes it takes some people longer to get on board than others. So you pick the ones who are on board and, get things accomplished, and then others will follow. It's just the way it goes. But change management's not simple.
Thanks, Mike. This is Stacy. And I wanted to just kind of tie together something like this whole presentation. This was great, by the way, with something from our company meeting yesterday, our Tuesday morning blend. So from a larger perspective, there's a lot of correlation in what you're talking about and the topic that we discussed yesterday, which kind of Abigail brought up, which was around systems thinking and just introducing the thought of systems, or the idea of systems thinking, to the company and kind of what that means, and essentially what you're talking about, taking that step back and not looking at something in isolation, but trying to understand the bigger picture. And this aligns kind of with a project that is going to be kicking off shortly. One of our companies, HomeWise, that does a lot of leadership training, growth, and development. It has a assessment called a Wayfinder, and it essentially addresses your diagnostic technique and feedback interview. It's all of that wrapped into one, and takes questions, interviews, all of these things. It's wrapped them into a process. And so we're actually going to be, this is what was discussed, just for everybody on the call, to make the correlation of what Mike was just discussing and what was discussed yesterday. That is going to be the path that we're going to be taking as an entire Rosewood company to take those steps forward. And so we're going to be doing it company by company, which then defines or kind of identifies areas and gaps of process, or gaps of communication, gaps of efficiencies, areas for improvement. And there is a additional step beyond that, which we really didn't discuss too much yesterday, but we're very trying to be as forward with AI as possible. And so the step after kind of identifying all of those things will be to then run an analysis on where AI can either supplement those, or we need to make changes to have AI in our current process, where AI can just change things altogether. So just from to kind of connect that back for everyone, I think all of the things that were said are very important things for you guys to look at, but just knowing that the Wayfinder that was discussed yesterday is looking at it from a much larger level in the Rosewood perspective and each company. So I wanted to try and clarify that a little bit for everyone. I do also want to make note of like what you were saying about just the constant changes. That is essentially our culture is constant change. And so I know it can be very uncomfortable, but our value for Innovate to Elevate supports all of the things that is being talked about here, because from as you said, speak up about the processes or things. Not everybody is doing something a little bit different, and not everybody is in the day-to-day and doesn't see, sometimes the areas or opportunities for improvements. So our Innovate to Elevate value is very key and important for everyone to kind of embrace that.
Yeah, and keep in mind, look, I say this with every business I work with. Not everybody loves to comment, I will say before I say it, but because I'm a change agent, I'm always trying to clarify for people, look, if your business isn't changing, unfortunately, you're failing. You're closer to going out of business than you are staying in business. You've got to adapt. You have to keep moving forward and looking for ways to, grow within the organization. And AI is going to be scary for people because AI feels like technology and will it take over for my role? It's not what automation should be for. I told you I've worked with automation companies. It should be, how do we involve them to make your role better and easier so you can be more efficient at what you're doing? and you can repurpose more of your time towards some other area of the business to help grow that. So it's, you know, it's important to adapt technology where you can so that people can grow within their own roles, is the way I look at that.
Yeah.
I take it down. Definitely not going back.
100% no. And I would then.
Now, when you're asking,
Was not muted.
I'm sorry, when you last said you're asking questions through that process and getting answers, are you doing a lot of surveys internally?
So the way that the process, the way that the process is built is it's based on the Helmwise method, which is our company. It's got 5 different pillars. There's questions that are associated with each pillar, looking for information from different perspectives. So there's different levels of employees that are being talked to, from the top to the middle to, like, you know, one of the kind of boots on the ground employees.
Sure.
And so it's getting, we're working, Kelly is leading up, she's on this call, she's leading up this initiative. So we're working through the best and most efficient way to, or I guess, run this engagement with the companies, so we're not taking up too much time. Because I mean, I'm assuming, as you know, like, there's a lot of time in the interviewing and the, you know, gathering information and all of that. So we're working on a kind of combination of questionnaire type things, and then getting analysis on that, and then following up with interviews, possibly based on that information to get deeper.
Okay. And the reason I ask, look, throughout my career, that the only challenge I have ever found with surveys are great, they're quick, they're timely, but not every employee puts their heart into a survey response, right? So you give them a, you know, rate this 1 to 5, and next thing you know, you get a whole bunch of 3s.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't think we've got a number survey.
Good.
We like words.
Yeah, I mean,
numbers only mean as much to someone as what it means to them. It's a
exactly
not very objective, I think, for this type of exercise.
Correct. And that's where I was going to say, and that's where I spend probably a little more time than I should doing a lot of face-to-face stuff, just because I want to hear your answer, but I also want to hear your voice tone, your inflections. I want to know what your facial expression is doing, because that'll tell me if you're answering honestly, type of thing. So, you know, whatever you can do to get the best feedback, it helps you get to your destination a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I had a question. And
sure.
It falls under like processes. How do you know when it's time to redesign a process instead of just simply improving it, or trying to, you know, band-aid it up to try to make it little tweaks here and there where you can just, yeah. How do you say, determine just to tear it down and
Yeah, and look, Antonio, that comes down to you potentially as a leader, or the leader having enough knowledge to not let other people just get away with the Band-Aid here and there, right? I mean, that's why you review it from input to output, and you're doing it step by step by step, and you're talking to those involved with it so you can hear exactly what their input is on it. You're going to know pretty quickly, in my personal view, and maybe I just feel this way because I've been doing it for 40 years, you're going to know pretty quickly when something's just broken. And it's not a matter of, okay, I can just change this one piece and fix it all. But this whole thing is just not functional. Nobody's following it. There are more than a handful of things wrong with how the process is currently working and it's operationalized, that why don't we just begin from scratch and do it right? You know, and again, I think it just comes down to how much of it doesn't seem to be working versus how many Band-Aids is this really going to take, and is the Band-Aid going to fix it? I mean, even 5 Band-Aids can't keep it from not work, or can keep it working forever. Let's just redo it.
Nice, thank you. And then the last question I had, for everybody on the call watching today, if they can leave with one habit to become better at seeing the system, what would that habit be for everyone on the call? They could start after this call.
I'd like to kind of add in on Antonio's first question. I think from our organization, there's some things that get a little bit tricky because we've got the processes that are immediately relevant to the department. And so it's a lot easier to see like those, I won't say siloed, but kind of like those end-to-end processes that live within a department. Where we, I think, reach a lot of challenges is being able to, when those processes extend beyond that department. So between marketing does a lot of work with operations.
Sure.
Everybody does a lot of work with operations, honestly, like that's what we're supporting. So just being able to know that your process that you're doing actually does extend beyond your department. And
That's
so
right.
it may be working
That's right.
smoothly in your purview, but it may not be, it may be breaking somewhere else. I think that is sometimes difficult to like identify where that is.
Right.
And so I think maybe Antonio, for your question, I think the cross-department processes are much harder, and like to identify where there's something not working well. And I think is just being able to have conversations and speak up, and utilizing our, one of our other values, we before me, is a collaborative way to say, hey, is this still working for everyone? Kind of scenario for evaluation as well.
Yeah, and it was in one of the slides. I don't think I covered it. Well, I know I didn't cover it to detail, but there is something too I've used throughout my career, which is I just simply call it a day in the life. I make supporting roles, people from supporting roles, and I'm sorry if I keep using sales as an example, but like in a sales organization, I'll have the salesperson sit with their sales support team for a day or two. Sit with the bid management team or the delivery team, and follow them through and see exactly how they're doing their job. But this also enables the person in that sales role to understand what things they're requesting or how they're doing their job and how it negatively impacts the other supporting role that's trying to help them. And they're adding process to it. And until people see that, they don't have the opportunity to sit back and say, okay, well, look, well, what if I do this differently? That should take 3 tasks away from you in a given day, and now you can get more accomplished in a more timely manner. So it starts to create a better partnership in thinking. So I've done that a lot, and it helps. I'm not saying it'll last forever. You got to continually do it to remind them, now you're going back to your old habits. Right. So let's keep looking at it. But it's a good way for people in certain roles to see, wow, what I'm doing is actually hurting all these other functions. Now that I've sat and watched what they have to do as inputs and how they do their job, I could be improving that myself. So I've always just called it a day in the life, for lack of a better term.
I think also like making sure that everyone is refocusing or redefining or coming back, maybe not redefining, but coming back to the overall purpose of the process, because some of the smaller pieces of the process can take on different purposes or just be looked at as a task. And that's where I think there's opportunity to find those band-aids that are not actually true, because you're defining a purpose for the process that is not the overall purpose. It is just a smaller purpose. So there's things I think that get put into place just to accomplish this one task instead of looking at the purpose of the process. Right. So I think that's Antonio, kind of circling back to your question, maybe coming back to what is the purpose of this process instead of just viewing it as an accomplishment of a task. And that might help define whether, or have you just like put Band-Aids all over something, that might need a knee replacement or whatever.
Yeah, and look, if you're going to have those 3 purposes of why you're shooting for an outcome, right? You can hang those up on a wall somewhere in everybody's office, right? So they're always reminded by it as they're trying to think through something. These were the 3 things we said we were going to accomplish, and the whole purpose for what we're doing. So it's always those little reminders that go a long way.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Stacy. Thank you guys for the great discussion. And Dr.
Sure.
Eberbar, thank you for joining us and setting all this up and giving us a great guest like Michael. So thank you all, Rosewood, for joining the July Leadership Live. If there's any other questions you guys have or think of, just email them my way. I can send them over to Michael. And yep, this will be up on YouTube. So if anybody on your team or anybody in the field wants to rewatch it, it will be up there. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Have a great day.